Hey kids, it was really good seeing you guys today. I'm glad all of you guys are healthy, and I can't wait to talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 on Zoom. So for your read aloud today, we're in the middle of chapter 23. It's when Alden and Sophie are down in, it's called the room where chances are lost. And so Alden has just asked Sophie to guide him back as he tries to break Finton's mind. Okay, so I'll start up here. The sand rustled in front of them, and Sophie barely managed not to squeal as another dwarf twisted out of the ground. Permission has been granted for you to enter, the strange creature murmured in a dry, cracked voice as he shook the loose grains from his shaggy fur and squinted at them with his dark, beady eyes. I am Crickor. I shall be your attendant. That's my Crickor voice. Alden gave a slight bow, and Sophie fumbled to copy him. Are you ready? Crickor asked, moving toward the metal door. Alden reached for Sophie's hand, probably to reassure her, but he was trembling so much it was hard to feel comforted. As ready as we'll ever be, Alden whispered. Then he pulled Sophie forward and inserted his Magician pendant into the keyhole in the center of the door. Metal latches clicked, but nothing happened until Crickor slipped a rounded disc of Magician into a thin slot hidden in the shadows at the edge of the door, like putting a coin inside a soda machine. A thunderous boom reverberated through the chamber, and a seal broke along the edges, letting bright orange light seep through the cracks. Focus on the floor as you walk, Crickor advised as he pushed open the door. It will spare you from seeing the madness. Oof. The first thing Sophie noticed was the smell. It wasn't rot or decay or waste like she would expect from a prison. Nor was it sulfur or magma like the center of the earth should smell. The only word she could think to describe it was bleak. If hopelessness had an odor, it would smell like exile, sharp and stale and bitter. Also noticeable was the sound. It wasn't loud or angry, no screaming or raging, just constant muffled moans, cries of misery or insanity. How big is this place? Sophie asked, her voice echoing off the cavernous walls. The metal hallway was lined with porthole-sized windows and seamless doors, and it curved up ahead, disappearing into the gloomy light. Not as big as you think, Alden told her as they made their way down the hall. The structure is a spiral curling in on itself. Still, there were a lot of doors. I thought crime was supposed to be rare. Exile is the prison for all the worlds. That's why we have to keep its location so secret. Not all species are as peaceful as ours. Almost on cue, some sort of creature screeched and crashed against the walls of its cell. Sophie moved closer to Alden. Despite her fear, she ignored Crickor's warning, scanning the doors and hoping to spot Prentice's name in the glowing labels above them. But then a face appeared in one of the windows. Moss green skin and slits for a nose, and brown fangs peeking through its flat lips. Sophie looked away, but she could feel it staring at her with its bulging, milky eyes as they passed. After that, she focused on the smooth, sterile floor, watching her reflection warp and skew as she tried not to imagine what other monsters hid behind the metal walls. On and on they walked until Sophie felt dizzy from winding round and round and round. And yet it still felt too soon when they stopped and Crickor announced, "The prisoner you seek is in here." Chapter 24. So normally I would do one chapter a day, but since we started in the middle of chapter 23, so I'll just read through 24. Is it safe? Sophie asked, as Alden slipped the Magician key into the plain silver door labeled Finton. It felt wrong to enter a prison cell with only a short, hairy dwarf to protect them. Where was Sandor with his bulging muscles and giant weapon when she actually wanted him? The prisoner is in a controlled confinement, and we have restrained him, Crickor answered. But stand behind me just in case, Alden warned. He started to twist the key, but Crickor blocked him. Your pendants, he said, holding out his furry hands. I can't believe I missed that. Alden removed his balefire crystal and handed it over. Sophie copied him. Her wrist tingled with the memory of her burns as Alden explained that Finton wouldn't be able to call sparks back to a flame, and she hoped this would be the last pyrokinetic she'd ever face. Krikor stepped out of the way, and Sophie hid behind Alden as he turned the key. Moist, frigid air blasted them when he pushed the door open, and a raspy voice said, "I guess this means the council has decided to make good on their threats." "Unless you'd like to make this easier on everyone," Alden told him, "it's not too late." "Oh, it's far too late. Far too late." The resignation in Finton's voice pricked at Sophie's heart. Even if he'd brought this on himself, what must it be like knowing you were about to turn into one of the mindless drones filling the hallway with their lifeless wails? "I'll admit, I didn't think they'd send you," Finton added quietly. "I guess I should see it as a compliment. They sent their star." Alden sighed and took a few steps forward. "Finton, I implore you to see reason." "Ah, you're not alone," I'd wondered. Finton interrupted. "You, hiding back there. No need to be afraid. They've gone to great lengths to make sure I'm perfectly harmless." Sophie peeked around Alden's side. Finton was thinner than she'd expected, almost fragile looking, with sky blue eyes and slender features. Not someone she would ever suspect of being wrapped up in a conspiracy to massacre the human race. He wore bright red clothes and was bound to a plain metal chair in the empty, icy room. "Amazing," he whispered, staring into her eyes. "You're the girl who bottled the Everblaze, aren't you?" Sophie nodded, focusing on his ears. The tops curled into more prominent points than Bronte's, sticking out his messy blonde hair. His dry lips stretched into a grin. "Wasn't it magnificent, the Everblaze?" He clarified when she frowned. "It's been ages since I've seen it, but it was a remarkable thing to behold." He stared into space like he was reliving the memory. "Couldn't you just feel the way the fire breathed with power and energy and life?" Fluorescent yellow flames danced through Sophie's mind, and she could almost feel the searing heat and the choking smoke as the fires closed in around her. "Mostly I just wanted to get out of there alive and stop it from killing any more innocent people." His smile toppled to a scowl. "I suppose only a pyrokinetic can truly appreciate the majesty of an unstoppable flame. The fire of the sun on the earth. I would have loved to see it again before." He closed his eyes. "If you'd tell us what you know, there wouldn't be a before," Alden reminded him. "We both know I'm never leaving this cold, empty room with no warmth, no kindling, nothing but solid metal and fireproof clothes. A life with no heat, no fire, isn't worth living." He shivered. "Besides," he added, shifting as much as his bonds would allow, "some secrets are worth protecting." "So you admit you are hiding something?" Alden asked him. Finton's hands curled around the metal arms of his chair, turning his knuckles white. "Our world is broken, Alden, and all the council does about it is condemn anyone brave enough to acknowledge that we have a problem. Break our minds, lock us deep in the earth, convince themselves that we are the criminals. But who are the ones ruining lives, destroying families, forbidding people from using their abilities, relegating them to working class? Pyrokinesis was forbidden because your insatiable craving for power killed 5 people. You supported the decision when you resigned from the council." "That was a regrettable mistake," Finton whispered, "and I understood the need for change. But when I lived the life they'd relegated me to, treated like the talentless with no way to satisfy my craving for flame, it's a daily struggle not to let my sanity slip away. I'm not so certain you've succeeded." Alden's voice was cold, but Sophie couldn't help feeling a tiny stab of sympathy for Finton. Having a special ability meant everything in their world. She can imagine how frustrating it would be to have one and have to deny it. And if his body actually craved it. "And that's only a small problem," Finton added, his voice building steam. "Left to their own devices, the council will let everything we've built crumble to dust. Someone had to stand up and fight for what matters. And while I'm not the one who cast the first sparks, I am willing to help keep the flames alive." "The flames have been extinguished," Alden shouted. Finton snorted a laugh. That's the funniest thing about rebellions. You can't stop them until they've consumed everything that fuels them. And from where I sit, I see plenty of kindling. His eyes locked with Sophie's. She's as much a part of it as I am. Never forget that. She's not a part of anything. If that were true, then why is she here? He stared at Sophie again, the kind of stare that made her want to squirm or hide because it was like he was looking through her instead of at her. You're choosing the wrong side, Alden. If anyone's mind should be broken, it's hers. She's hiding more secrets than anyone. Alden grabbed his shoulders. That's enough. Sophie forced air into her lungs and tried to shove his horrible words out of her mind, but they'd already rooted themselves to her fears. Enough, Alden repeated. He took a deep breath and turned to face Sophie. Are you ready for this? She gave a shaky nod. Doing this brings me no joy, Finton, Alden told him quietly. But this group, this rebellion you're protecting, will be stopped. I'll do whatever it takes to protect what matters. Finton's glare screamed a million snide insults, but all he said was, well, then I guess you better get started, shouldn't you? Yes, I believe I should, Alden stepped back, smoothing his hair and rubbing his temples. Last chance. All the color had drained from Finton's face, but he still gritted his teeth and said, I'm not the first to sacrifice myself for the cause, and I won't be the last. And your sacrifice will be nothing. I'll find whatever you're hiding in the break. You'll never find it in time. I know how to protect my secrets, and if I can, I'll drag you down with me. You'll only hurt yourself if you try, Alden turned to Sophie. I'll need you to keep physical contact with me. Sophie stumbled over to him, her palms slick with sweat as she curled her fingers around his wrist. What am I? How do I don't know. Relax, Sophie. Your job is incredibly easy. All you have to do is open your mind to mine and stay connected. If you feel my thoughts start to slip away, simply call for me to guide me back. Think you can handle that? But he said he can drag you down. He's just trying to scare you. The worst he can do is block me from finding what he's hiding before his mind shatters. Just keep your eyes closed and try not to pay attention to anything you see. I'll work as fast as I can. How long will it take? She whispered. No more than a few minutes. Finton laughed cold and sharp. That's what you think. Alden ignored him, placing his hands on Finton's temples. Go ahead and connect to my thoughts, Sophie. Let me know when you're ready. She felt too overwhelmed to think, but she closed her eyes and tried to stretch out her mind, and thought she might be sick all over the floor. She took a deep breath and tried to tell herself that this was no different than trying a new skill in her telepathy session. It didn't help as much as she'd wanted, but when she tried again, she was able to spread out her consciousness enough to reach Alden's mind. Alden's thoughts filled her head, rippling like a soft breeze. There's no reason to worry, Sophie. I trust you. Telling her not to worry was like telling her not to breathe, but all she said was, be careful. You too. She counted each passing breath, wondering how she would know when the memory break started. Would something change? Would it feel suddenly different? Then Alden's mind dimmed and turned cold, and Finton started to scream. Whew, that was chapter 24. Okay, guys, I will talk to you tomorrow and read to you chapter 25.